The sky didn't crack. It didn't roar, didn't flash, didn't warn anyone the way disasters are supposed to. It simply folded. At first, no one noticed. Not really. It started as a subtle distortion, like heat rising from asphalt on a summer day, but it spread unnaturally fast, bending the clouds inward as if something massive pressed against them from the other side. I was halfway across the street when the world hesitated. Not stopped, just slowed. The chatter of pedestrians dipped into an uneasy murmur. A car horn stretched into a long, warped note. Even the wind seemed unsure which direction it should blow. I looked up, and the sky was wrong. It curved where it shouldn't. A crease formed across it, sharp and unnatural, like someone had taken the blue expanse and pinched it between invisible fingers. "What the hell?" someone muttered nearby. The crease deepened. Then it split. Not open, not like a tear, but like reality itself was being peeled back. For a fraction of a second, I thought I saw something beyond it. Not stars, not space. Something brighter, something alive. Then she fell. No fire, no explosion, no sound, at least not at first. She descended in eerie silence, her enormous form slipping to the fold in the sky, like she didn't belong to gravity at all. It wasn't a drop, it was a release. And then, impact. The ground didn't just shake, it lurched. I was thrown off my feet as a shockwave ripped through the city, smashing windows, flipping cars, sending people sprawling like rag dolls. The air slammed into my chest so hard I couldn't breathe. Then the sound hit, a deep, thunderous boom that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Dust rose in a massive cloud on the horizon, swallowing buildings whole. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then everything broke. People screamed. Sirens ignited. Somewhere nearby, metal twisted and collapsed with a grinding shriek. "Get down!" someone shouted. "Earthquake?" another voice yelled. But I knew it wasn't. Earthquakes don't come from the sky. I pushed myself up, coughing, my ears ringing. Every instinct told me to run, to get as far away from whatever just happened as possible. Everyone else did. Crowds surged down the street, panic spreading faster than the dust cloud rolling toward us. Emergency vehicles barreled past, lights flashing, cutting through chaos. I stood there for a second too long, because I was still looking at the sky. It was normal again. No crease, no tear, no sign anything had happened at all, except for what had fallen through it. I should have left. I should have followed everyone else. Instead, I started walking toward the smoke. The closer I got, the worse it became. Buildings cracked like broken teeth. Power lines sagged dangerously low, sparks snapping in the air. The streets were choked with debris, glass, metal, chunks of concrete that shouldn't have been moved so easily. And then the military arrived. Fast, too fast. Convoys roared past me, armored vehicles grinding over debris without slowing. Drones filled the sky, black shapes darting through the smoke like mechanical birds. Helicopters circled above, their blades chopping the air into a constant, oppressive rhythm. They knew, or at least, they had expected something. Barricades went up within minutes. Soldiers poured out, shouting orders, pushing civilians back. Restricted zone. Move back. Areas not secure. Get behind the line. I blended into the edge of the crowd forming at the perimeter. No one was paying attention to individuals. Just a mass of people trying to get a glimpse of whatever had landed. And then the dust began to clear. At first, all I saw was destruction. A massive crater carved into the industrial district, swallowing warehouses whole. Steel beams jutted out at impossible angles. The ground itself looked crushed, like something enormous had pressed down on it. Then I saw her. My brain didn't process it immediately. It tried to turn her into something familiar, some structure, some wreckage, anything that made sense. But there was no mistaking it. She was lying there, a giant, a woman, her body stretched across the crater, impossibly large, her limbs resting among the ruins like they belonged there. Her skin wasn't quite human, too smooth, too luminous, like light was trapped beneath it, shifting softly with every breath. Because she was breathing. I saw it, a slow rise, a slow fall. "She's alive," someone whispered behind me. The word spread to the crowd like a ripple. Alive! 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 The soldiers reacted instantly. Weapons raised. Positions tightened. Orders barked into radios. Confirm movement. Thermal signatures active. Maintain distance. But she didn't move. Not really. Only the faint motion of her breathing. And then her eyes opened. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, deliberate, like waking from a very long sleep. Two vast, glowing eyes revealed themselves, their light cutting to the haze of dust and smoke. They weren't human, not exactly, but they weren't alien in the way people feared either. They were aware, searching, and for a single impossible moment, they met mine. I froze. Everything else disappeared. The noise, the shouting, the chaos. It all faded into something distant and irrelevant. There was no rage in her gaze, no hunger, no violence, just confusion, and something else. Something that made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. She looked lost, not like a monster, not like a conqueror, like someone who had woken up in the wrong place, surrounded by things she didn't understand. A soldier near the front raised his weapon higher. Target is conscious, he said, voice tight. Awaiting orders. Orders. That word snapped the world back into place. The fear returned. The noise. The tension. I should have stepped back. Should have let the people with guns handle it. But I couldn't stop staring at her. Because even as dozens of weapons locked onto her, she didn't react. Didn't defend herself. Didn't even flinch. She just watched. And somehow I knew, whatever happened next, we were about to get it completely wrong. They moved faster than fear, before the dust had fully settled, before anyone could ask the right questions. The narrative was already written. Threat, unknown, potentially hostile. By nightfall, every screen in the city, phones, billboards, emergency broadcasts showed the same message. Remain indoors. Avoid the impact zone. Military control has been established. They never said her name. They never asked if she had one. I didn't go home. I told myself I would. I even walked halfway there, past shattered storefronts and emergency crews working under floodlights. But every step away from the impact zone felt wrong, like I was leaving something unfinished. So I turned back. By then, the perimeter had tripled. Concrete barriers, armed patrols, mobile command units lined up in neat, efficient rows. Floodlights turned night into a harsh, artificial day, casting long shadows across the ruined district. It looked less like a disaster site and more like a battlefield waiting to happen. I lingered at the edge of the crowd again, listening. They're saying it's not alone. I heard it can level cities. My cousin's in the army, he said they're prepping heavy weapons. Rumors spread faster than facts, and fear fed on all of it, beyond the barricades. She was still there, still lying in the crater, still not moving. The second day was worse. Not because anything happened, but because nothing did. She didn't attack, didn't stand, didn't even try to communicate. She just existed, and that terrified them more than anything else. I found ways closer each time I returned. A gap in a fence, a distracted guard, a supply truck I walked beside like I belonged there. Eventually, I made it inside the perimeter. No one stopped me. There was too much going on, too many people, too much noise, too much tension stretched thin across too many moving parts. Up close, she was overwhelming. Not just her size, though that alone was enough to break comprehension, but the details. Her skin wasn't a single color. It shifted subtly, like faint patterns of light were moving beneath the surface. Not random, structured, alive. Her hair spread across the rubble like strands of liquid silver, catching the floodlights and bending them into something softer. And her breathing, each inhale pulled the air around her inward, stirring dust into slow spirals. Each exhale pushed it back out in a warm, steady wave. I stood there longer than I should have, watching, waiting, trying to understand something I had no framework for. Then her eye moved. Not much, just enough. And it found me again. It wasn't coincidence. I knew that now. Out of everything, soldiers, machines, lights, movement, she was looking at me. I felt it before I understood it. A pressure, not physical, something deeper, quieter, like a voice forming without sound. Then it came. You are still here. The words weren't heard. They simply appeared, inside my mind. I staggered back a step, heart racing. What? No one reacted. The soldiers kept moving. Radios crackled. Engines hummed. No one else heard her. You returned. I swallowed, trying to steady myself. Yeah. My voice sounded small, useless, but she heard it. I could feel that much. You are not like the others. I glanced around instinctively. Soldiers stood in clusters, weapons never lowering. Technicians monitored readings I didn't understand. Drones hovered, their lenses fixed on her from every angle. They're scared, I said quietly. There was a pause, longer this time, as if she was thinking. They look at me like I am a storm. You kind of fell out of the sky. I replied, hard not to see that as a problem. Another pause. Then, I did not mean to. That hit me harder than it should have. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. No defensiveness. No anger. Just honesty. You don't know how you got here? I asked. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything before. I was running. The words came slower now. There was light, then tearing, then here, running. From what? Before I could ask, a sharp alarm cut through the air. Loud, urgent, different from the constant background noise. Everything shifted instantly. Soldiers snapped into tighter formation. Command was shouted. Equipment powered up with a rising, ominous hum. What's happening? I muttered. I didn't have to wait long for an answer. A voice boomed over the loudspeakers, cold and controlled. Attention, all units. Authorization has been granted. Execution protocol is now in effect. My stomach dropped. Execution? No, that didn't make sense. She hasn't done anything. I said, louder now, looking around like anyone would listen. No one did. Missile platforms rotated into position along the perimeter. Their movements were smooth, mechanical, final. Energy cannons adjusted their aim, glowing faintly as they charged. Every weapon pointed at her, and she didn't move. Not a twitch, not a shift, nothing. Is this death? She asked. The question didn't feel like fear. It felt like uncertainty, like she genuinely didn't know. My chest tightened. They think you're dangerous. I said, my voice barely steady. They think if they don't act first. Will I hurt them? I hesitated, because I didn't know, because I had no reason to trust her, except for everything I had seen. No, I said finally. The word came out stronger than I expected. You haven't hurt anyone. You haven't even tried. Another pause, shorter this time. Then why? I don't know. I snapped, more at the situation than at her. Because they're scared. Because you're big and unknown and dropped out of the sky, and I stopped because none of that sounded like a good enough reason. The weapons reached full charge. A high-pitched whine filled the air, building towards something irreversible. I looked at her, at the way she lay there, completely exposed, at the way her eyes stayed on me, not on the weapons, on me, and something inside me locked into place. This wasn't right. Whatever she could be, this wasn't how it should end. You should leave, she said softly. You will be destroyed. Yeah, I whispered. Then I shook my head. No, my legs were already moving before I fully understood the decision. Past the equipment, past the soldiers, past the invisible line no one was supposed to cross. Shouts erupted behind me. Hey, stop, get back. I ignored all of it, because there was only one thing that mattered now. If they were going to kill her, they weren't doing it without going through me first. I didn't feel brave. People always imagine moments like that as something sharp and clear, like a switch flipping, like fear turning into courage. It wasn't. It was messy. My legs were shaking. My chest felt too tight. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to stop, to turn back, to survive. But I didn't. I kept running. The ground beneath my feet was uneven, fractured from the impact. Dust kicked up with every step. stick in my throat, making it hard to breathe. The air smelled like burning metal and something else, something unfamiliar, almost electric. Stop right there. The command cracked through the chaos behind me. I didn't stop. I crossed the line, and everything changed. The noise dulled. Not completely, but like I had stepped slightly out of sync with the rest of the world. The shouting felt farther away. The mechanical hum of the weapons softened into a distant vibration. Or maybe it just didn't matter anymore, because I was standing in front of her. Up close, truly close, she was impossible. Her face alone was larger than a building. Every feature carved with precision that felt too perfect to be accidental. Her skin shimmered faintly, light shifting beneath it in slow, fluid patterns. Her eye turned slightly, focusing. On me. You're not dying here, I said, though my voice barely carried. Then I turned and faced them, rows of soldiers, weapons locked, machines humming with restrained destruction. For a second, just a second, no one moved. Then the shouting came back all at once. Civilian in the strike zone. Get him out of there. Stand down or we will proceed. I raised my arms before I could think better of it, stepping forward just enough to make it undeniable. You'll have to shoot me first. The words tore out of me, louder than I expected, echoing across the ruined district. Silence followed. Not total silence, but enough. Enough that every eye turned toward me. Every weapon remained aimed. But no one fired. A voice cut through the tension, amplified and cold. Step aside immediately. You are interfering with a classified military operation. No, I said. It came out steadier this time. She hasn't done anything. She is an unidentified extraterrestrial entity with unknown capabilities. The voice replied. We are not waiting for a demonstration. She's not attacking. I shouted back. She's not even moving. That does not mean she cannot. That doesn't mean she will. The argument hung in the air, fragile and pointless at the same time, because I could feel it. The decision had already been made. I wasn't changing their minds. I was just delaying them. Behind me, something shifted. Not physically, not in a way anyone else would notice. But I felt it, her attention tightening around me. Why are you doing this? Her voice was clearer now, closer. I swallowed hard, not taking my eyes off the soldiers. Because someone has to, I murmured. You will die. Yeah, I said. Probably. There was a pause. A different kind this time. Not confusion. Not curiosity. Something deeper. You are strange. I almost laughed. Yeah, I said under my breath. I've been told that. The weapons began to power up again. The hum returned. Louder, sharper, vibrating to the ground beneath my feet. Lights intensified. Systems locked in. They were done waiting. Final warning. The amplified voice said, move or be considered a hostile obstruction. I didn't move. My legs felt like they might give out at any second, but I forced them to stay locked. My arms stayed raised, even as they trembled. Do it then, I said. The word surprised even me. If this is what you call protection. Go ahead. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, every system reached peak charge. The air itself seemed to tighten, like the world was bracing for impact. And then, everything stopped. Not by command. Not by hesitation. By failure. The lights flickered. The hum collapsed into silence. Weapons powered down mid-charge, their energy dispersing into harmless static. Screens across the perimeter glitched, lines of data scrambling into nonsense. What's happening? Someone shouted. System failure. Controls are unresponsive. I blinked, confused, lowered my arms slightly. This wasn't because of me. This was something else. Something bigger. The air changed. Pressure built, not downward, but outward, like something immense was pushing against reality itself. I felt it before I saw it. A distortion above us. I turned slowly. The sky, it was folding again. But this time, it wasn't subtle. The clouds twisted violently, pulled toward a central point that didn't exist seconds ago. Light bent unnaturally, stretching and warping like reflections in broken glass. The crease formed faster this time, deeper, wider, No, I whispered. Around me, soldiers forgot about me completely. Weapons lowered, not by choice, but because they no longer mattered. All eyes turned upward. The sky split, and beyond it, something moved. Not one shape. Many, huge, shifting, too large to fully see, even through the tear. The air grew heavy, thick enough that breathing felt like pushing against resistance. Sound dulled. Even the distant helicopters faltered, their movements unstable. Behind me, I felt her again, stronger than before. They are coming. Her voice carried something new now. Not confusion, not curiosity. Fear, real fear. I turned back toward her, my throat dry. Who are they? For a moment, she didn't answer. Her gaze wasn't on me anymore. It was fixed on the sky, on whatever was pressing through it. When she finally spoke, the words were quiet, but heavy. I tried to escape. A shadow shifted beyond the tear. Bigger than her. Much bigger. But they do not stop. The distortion widened, reality stretching thinner and thinner as something on the other side pushed closer. 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 The weapons were dead. The soldiers were frozen. And me? I was still standing there. Between them. Between her. Between two things I didn't understand. My fear should have overwhelmed me. It didn't, because for the first time since this started, I realized something worse than dying here, letting them face this alone. I looked up at the tearing sky, then back at her. We're in trouble, aren't we? A pause. Then, yes, simple, certain, terrifying. I took a slow breath, forcing my legs to stay steady. Okay, I said quietly. Not brave, not confident, just accepting. Then we deal with it. Above us, the sky continued to break, and whatever was waiting beyond it was almost here. The sky didn't just open, it unraveled. What had once been a clean, distant blue was now stretched thin, peeling back in jagged layers that didn't behave like anything natural. Light warped the edges of the tear, bending into impossible angles, like reality itself couldn't agree on what it was supposed to look like anymore. And behind it, movement. Not one thing, not a fleet, not creatures in any way I could define. They were presence, mass without clear form, shadows that shifted as if they were trying to become something solid and failing. Every time I tried to focus on a single shape, it dissolved into something else, too large, too complex, too wrong. A low pressure filled the air, pressing against my chest, my skull, my thoughts. People dropped to their knees. Not from impact, from overload. What is that? Someone choked out nearby. No one answered, because no one knew, except her. Behind me, the ground trembled, not violently, but steadily, like something ancient was waking up. I turned. She was moving, not the subtle shifts from before, not the slow breathing. She was rising. At first, it was almost imperceptible. The tilt of her head, the shift of her shoulder lifting free from the crushed earth. Then more of her followed, her massive form pulling itself upward with a carefulness that felt deliberate, controlled. She could have destroyed everything around her just by standing, but she didn't. Every movement was measured, gentle, as if she was aware of how fragile everything here was. The ground groaned under her weight, fractures spreading outward in slow lines. But nothing collapsed further. Nothing new was destroyed. I thought you couldn't move, I said, my voice barely audible under strain in the air. I chose not to, she replied. There was no pride in it, no arrogance, just fact. She rose higher, her full height finally revealed, towering, luminous, impossibly vast against the broken skyline. The floodlights scattered across her form, unable to fully contain her in their artificial glow. And still, her attention wasn't on the soldiers, not on the weapons, on the sky, on what was coming. The tear widened again. Something pressed through, not fully, just enough to distort the opening further. A shape, if it could be called that, leaned against the edge of reality from the other side, and the world reacted. Glass shattered across the distant city, without being touched. Car alarms screamed, and died in the same instant. The air vibrated with a frequency too low to hear, but impossible to ignore. I dropped to one knee, gripping the ground as a wave of pressure rolled through me. It wasn't physical force. It was presence. Like standing too close to something that didn't recognize you as something that should exist. They're coming for you? I forced out. Her answer came slower now. Heavier. They do not come for me. A pause. Then, they come for what I left behind. My stomach twisted. What does that mean? Another shift in the sky. Another impossible movement from the things beyond it. They consume patterns, she said. Civilizations. Systems. Thought. I stared at her, trying to process words that didn't fit into anything I understood. Consume, how? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she showed me. For a brief, blinding moment, my vision fractured. Not a hallucination, not imagination. Something else. I saw a world vast, luminous, filled with structures that seemed grown rather than built. Beings moved across its surface. Tall, radiant, not unlike her. Then, darkness, not spreading, arriving. The same shifting, formless presence I now saw beyond our sky. The world didn't explode, didn't burn. It unraveled. Structures lost coherence, dissolving into fragments of light. The beings flickered, their forms breaking apart into something unrecognizable. Patterns erased, not destroyed, like they had never fully existed. Then it was gone. I gasped, vision snapping back to reality, my hands shaking. That's what they do. Yes. Her voice was quieter now. I ran before they reached the core. You ran here. I did not know where the fracture would open. A bitter realization settled in. So you didn't bring them here on purpose. No, but you still brought them. She didn't deny it, because she couldn't. Behind us, the military finally broke from their paralysis. Fall back, someone shouted. All units. Retreat beyond primary perimeter. Vehicles roared to life. Soldiers scrambled, abandoning positions that had seemed so absolute minutes ago. Their weapons were useless now, and they knew it. For the first time since this began, they weren't the ones in control. They weren't even part of the equation anymore. I looked up at her, at the way she stood now, fully awake, fully present, facing something even she feared. What do we do? I asked. It felt like a stupid question, but I didn't have anything else. She looked down at me, and even now, even with the sky breaking apart above us, her gaze was steady. We stand. Simple, the same certainty as before. I let out a shaky breath, pushing myself back to my feet. Yeah, I said, not because I wasn't terrified, but because there was nothing else left to do. Above us, the tear widened one final time. Reality stretched, then broke. Something began to emerge, not just pressing against the edge anymore, crossing it. The first true piece of it entered our world, and everything around it warped in response. Light bent toward it. Sound collapsed into silence. The ground beneath it cracked without being touched. It didn't have a shape, but it had weight. Existential. Absolute. And it was looking, not with eyes, but with awareness that swept across everything at once. Searching, measuring, deciding. I felt it pass over me like a cold shadow, then move on, toward her. She didn't step back. Didn't hesitate. She took one slow step forward instead, placing herself between it and the rest of the world. The ground shook beneath her, but she held steady. I swallowed hard, my entire body screaming at me to run. I didn't. I stepped forward too, not because I thought I could help, not because I thought I mattered in the scale of things, but because I had already made the choice. I wasn't leaving her to face this alone. Above us, more of them gathered at the edge of the tear, waiting, watching. The first one stretched further into our world, and for a moment, everything held, balanced on the edge of something irreversible. I glanced up at her. You still think we can stop this? A pause. Then, I think we can try. It wasn't hope, not exactly, but it was enough. The sky was no longer sky. The world was no longer safe. And whatever came next would decide if anything remained at all.